You know what? I'm so excited to see all you here because this is Ohio. Ohio will determine who the next president will be. And that's why we're all here today, because we want to make sure that the right person becomes the president of the United States. Hillary Clinton. And so, in the last campaign, back in 2012, the presidential candidates came here 77 times in Columbus. 77 times. More than any other city outside of New York City. And so, we're going to see it again. And that's a good thing, because we are the epicenter of White House determination. And so, Bill Clinton knows that, because he was the president of the United States. He came through Ohio, and Ohio got him over the top, and we're going to get Hillary to the top as well. We got a lot of work to do in Columbus, a lot of work to do in Ohio. We have to win in this primary coming up on Tuesday. Everybody must vote and take 10 people with you, and then we have to go on to fight for the nation in November. Now it's time to bring out a great man, one of the finest people I know, the President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting Hillary.
Thank you for having us.
And work like crazy for the next week. I want to first thank Mayor Michael Coleman. He's been a friend of mine a long time, and you heard all that stuff he said. That confirms Clinton's second law of politics. Whenever possible, be introduced by a friend. They will airbrush your flaws and exaggerate your virtues. So, I want to thank Becky Higgins and Cheryl Mathis of the Ohio Education Association for hosting us here. I want to thank Zach Klein, your council president, and other members of the council who are here, and our organizers, Emma Pellerin and Jared Rutka, who I think spoke before. I want to make a couple of points here that I think are important, because if you're going to be working, you need to get out there and be able to win an argument. This state has been very, very good to our family. I carried Ohio twice, and no Republicans ever won the White House without carrying Ohio. Both times when I won, there was a Republican governor. And thanks to a lot of you, we won anyway. And it worked out pretty well for the people of Ohio. And Hillary did well here. And now we've got a different situation, because we can't spend as much time here because the calendar is so compressed. We started 3 weeks later than 8 years ago, and a lot of the primaries are scheduled 3 weeks earlier. So I remember when I was here 8 years ago, I made 21 stops, and I loved it. So we have to depend on you. And I just want to say a couple of things that I think are important. It's been a highly unusual election. Like, every Republican debate, I sit there with bated breath, waiting for the great school food fight. But there's a reason for all this anxiety, intensity, and passion in both our primaries. Even though I like the way ours is playing out better. And that is that even though America is outperforming every other big economy on earth, even though we've got 14 million jobs in the last 5 years, the most since that other Democrat was president, whatever his name was. Even though we got 90% of our people with health insurance for the first time in our history. Even though we look even better for the future because we have a young, diverse workforce, we have a great education system, we have a great science and technology base. We rank first or second in the entire world in scientific surveys. Our party still believes in science, you know. And the ability to generate energy from the sun and the wind, all of which the president said in his last State of the Union address. There's a lot of anxiety, anger, and frustration because about 84% of the people still hadn't gotten a pay raise since the crash. About half the people are living on what they were living on the day I left office. You got all these young millennials covered up to their ears in college debt. They can't move out of their parents' homes. Much less ever think about borrowing money to start their own business or anything like that. So job number one here is to get this economy going again for everybody. We are finally in a position to do that. I personally believe the president's done a better job than he gets credit for. But I want to explain what I mean by that. If you can go back 400 years, all over the world, it normally takes 10 full years at least to get over the kind of financial whipping we took on the crash. Now we got the jobs back early, but not the wages. There's way too much inequality in access to jobs, incomes, education, healthcare, the whole shebang. We have to address that. Because now, finally, we are in a position to grow together. And my argument for Hillary is pretty simple. I think she got the best economic plan, the best college aid plan. I think she's got the best record as a change maker. And she's the only person left in either party who's basically spent a lifetime making changes that make people's lives better at home and had serious national security experience to guarantee it will be as safe as possible without giving up our values. So, where the jobs are, first, Hillary calls for a major commitment to do two things, neither of which can be outsourced. Rebuild the infrastructure of America. Flint, Michigan is not the only place with elevated lead levels in the water and in children's blood. Cleveland does too.
Wow.
I was in Jackson, Mississippi. They do too. She wants to spend enough money to tear up all of the rusty pipes in America, lay new ones, give every child a healthy future, and create a ton of good paying jobs in the process. It's important. When I leave you, I'm going down to Chillicothe on my way to Dayton tonight. She's the first person to call for doing something extra to incentivize investment in coal country, in the rest of Appalachia, and every part of America that's been left out and left behind. Number one, give everybody in this country access to affordable, rapid broadband, and a lot of those people will create their own jobs because they'll be part of the national economy. Number two, give people extra incentives to invest in those areas. We had a modest program that gave up to 39% tax credits for people to invest in those areas, and the Republicans let it die in the last Congress. We need to bring back that plus more. She's the first person in either party to call for doing something for Appalachia and other places that have been left out and left behind, and to say there is a connection between the places that are most distressed and the places with the highest rates of addiction to prescription drugs and heroin. And we should deal with them both, including treating this drug problem like a public health problem with more mental health and more treatment facilities. But you also have to give people something to look forward to when they get up in the morning. And she is committed to doing that. Second point, she wants to put up 500 million solar panels in the next 4 years and have everybody on their own clean energy within 8 years. Everybody in the country. That'll create huge numbers of jobs, and they can't be outsourced. Number three, she wants us to realize we've gained 900,000 manufacturing jobs since the crash, and now we are in a position to produce far more modern products with advanced manufacturing than we have been in a long time for a simple reason. Manufacturing is the most productive sector of anybody's economy, which means you can pay people good living, and every year labor will be a smaller percentage of the cost, and materials, energy, and transportation will be a bigger percentage. This is a simple equation. Since we got the biggest market in the world, save the transportation and build the stuff here. We can do that again if we finance it. And what she proposes to do is to take these companies that have been misbehaving, at least I think they have. Take Johnson Controls. It's a great company. My foundation worked with them to retrofit the Empire State Building. We created 275 full-time jobs and cut the energy use of the world's oldest big building to get a LEED certification by 40%. They did that with their technology, but their main business is an auto parts supply company. So what did they do? They came to Congress and they said, please give us the bailout. They got it. What did they do then? They said, okay, thank you for your tax money. I'm taking my tax money to Northern Ireland because the corporate tax rate is a third as high. By pretending to be bought out by some T-Nazi company that now allegedly owns us so we can pay taxes. She says if anybody else does that, they ought to pay an exit tax for getting out of America. And if you take tax breaks from the state of Ohio, from the city of Columbus, any other city, or from the federal government through the program that Hillary wants to bring back to create markets everywhere, and then you leave anyway, as soon as you get the tax breaks, you ought to have to give back the last 5 years of tax breaks. And then use those two funds to move jobs back to America. Give the breaks to people that want to put us to work, not put us out of work. Now, the last thing I want to say is you can't forget that 2/3 of the new jobs we've created in the last 20 years have come in small business. And the mayor just took me on this tour of Long Street in the old new, beautiful auditorium. What Hillary wants to do is to make sure that the regulations for keeping Wall Street from wrecking Main Street again, which are the toughest we've ever had. I don't care what anybody running for any office says. What we've got on the books now is way stronger than anything we had for the last 20 years. The government can break up any kind of bank if they keep taking risks. It can fine them. It can require them to keep more cash. But a lot of regulators around the country have applied those rules, which are expensive to comply with, to local banks, and they made it more expensive to make small business loans. So just think of wherever you bank. If some young person wants to go in and borrow $50,000, $60,000 to start a bakery, if it costs as much to process a $60,000 loan as a $6 million loan, there'll be fewer $60,000 loans. Hillary wants to make sure that we regulate what we should regulate and let the small business market go again. We got to get back in the top 5 in the world in small business formation. Now, we got to get incomes up. The best way to do that is to recognize why they're not rising. The main reason is the labor markets haven't been tight enough. And therefore, not enough people are in the workforce. We're creating jobs now. We are no longer in the top 20 in the world in women in the workforce. Why? Because we're one of only 7 countries that doesn't give any paid leave. Every man in this room should be for paid leave and equal pay so we can get more people in the workforce and people can succeed in raising their kids and working for a living, and that will help us to grow this economy. Second thing that's killing this country's effort to reduce inequality is that companies that are publicly held, that is stock companies, have for 40 years been steadily moving toward giving more and more of their money to their stockholders and their top management and less to their workers and the communities. Now, from the 1930s through the dark ages when I finished law school, we all learned that corporations were not people, but creatures of the state. They got certain breaks for being corporations, like limited liability. In return for that, they had more or less equal responsibilities to their customers, their employees, their communities, and their stockholders. Then what happened? Because you only have to hold the stock a year and a day to get a capital gains rate which is lower than ordinary income tax, you have all these activist shareholders that don't care if they wreck the companies. They don't care if they force layoffs in profitable divisions. Hillary thinks we should give companies that share their earnings with their employees in a significant way a big tax credit, and she thinks we should stop giving lower capital gains treatment in a year. If you take it out to 3 years, then there will be no incentive to force companies to spend all their money on their shareholders instead of reinvesting it. And guess what? The evidence is clear. People who invest in companies that take care of their employees and their communities are investing in companies that do better than most over any 10-year period. Most of them do better over any 5-year period. We need to go back to sharing the work and the welfare and the earnings that people make. You think none of these companies can make money if there wasn't somebody working there. And that's a big, big deal. Then we have to make sure that we educate and train a workforce that can do all this work, beginning with what a lot of these teachers do. She believes we've overcomplicated this federal role in education. If you look at the best performing schools in the world, they all have two things in common. They have really good teachers that help each other get better, and they have principals that know what the heck they're doing. You know, it's not rocket science. They also have a definable culture in every school, and it can be different from school to school depending on what the needs of the kids are. But she wants the education department to get back to supporting quality teaching and quality principals, and she believes that's the best way to raise student performance. That's what they have done all over the world. Second thing is, she wants every student to be able to go to college, community college, an advanced training program, and emerge from it debt-free. Now, it's a big difference between debt-free and free tuition for everybody. And I think she's got the better side of the argument. Think Ohio, okay? The cost of college has exploded. It's gotten worse because state legislators, many governed by Republicans, have to give some money to the public schools constitutionally. And if they want to cut taxes and do other stuff, what are they going to cut? The colleges and universities. What are the colleges and universities going to do? Raise tuition and behave more like private schools. If you have tuition free for everybody, then all these legislators will think, oh goody, we can make them raise it some more. And pretty soon all the kids will be in trouble again with debt. What Hillary wants to do is say, look, if you need free tuition, we'll give that to you. And not just at public institutions, but at historically black colleges and universities, and other small schools for first and second generation Americans, and in public and private schools that keep their tuition modest and their graduation rate high. You should be able to qualify and get your tuition paid if you need it, and get more help if you need it. But for upper income people, we should pay our own kids' tuition, because we're going to have to raise some revenues from higher income people, not because we resent them, but because that's where the money is. Only the top 16% of us have made any money in the last 8 years. And that money ought to be used to put the rest of the American people to work in good paying jobs. We shouldn't be just recycling it to pay tuition. But if you have debt-free tuition and debt-free costs, you help the people that need tuition. If they need more, you help them. And then you give every student the chance to do 10 hours of work study a week. Guess what that does? They not only earn money, but it cuts the cost of operating the colleges, so there'll at least be some incentive to hold down costs instead of explode them. I think her plan's better. Even more important is all this debt that's been already accumulated. She proposed to let graduates who have debt from whatever source, including graduate schools, do two things. One, refinance their debt, just like you can refinance a house. If you did that, college debt's the only thing you can't refinance. You know, it's the only loan. If we did that overnight, if we did it today, by tomorrow, 25 million Americans would save an average of $2,000 each. At one thing. Then she believes we should let accumulated debt be treated like a home mortgage, because a college education is a lifetime asset. So everybody should be able to convert it into a 20-year plan that you pay out as a low fixed percentage of your after-tax income, so that nobody's going to be burdened by it. Kids can move out of their parents' home. If they took a job just because they wanted to make debt payments, and there's a job over here they love that pays less, they can take it now because their debt payment will go down. If they want to go to the bank and borrow that $60,000 to start a bakery, it won't count against their credit scores. It would just literally lift the burden off. And if they do 3 years in public service, they can get rid of the debt for life altogether. Otherwise, at the end of 20 years, the debt's canceled, no matter how much they still owe. Look, this is a big deal. We have to do these things if you want to have more jobs, raise incomes, and prepare people to do it. And she also covers advanced training programs and their costs. I was down in Louisiana the other day. We had a primary down there, and there was, she did pretty well. But anyway, I talked to a friend of mine from New Orleans. He said, just in that area, there were job advertisements for 7,500 welders. They all make good money, they're just not being trained to do the job. So we've got to do this. We got to do it together. Now briefly, let me say, my experience is, I've been working on this a long time. When I was a governor for 12 years, by the time I came to Ohio running for president, we led the country in job growth. We were one of only 8 states that gained manufacturing jobs in the 80s. But it's hard work. It's easy to talk about change and quite another thing to bring it about. When I was president, 95% of the people had higher income gains than they did when President Reagan was in office. Under the Bushes, they went down. Why? Because trickle-down economics and having no regulation on the finance system is a lousy growth strategy. The middle class incomes went up 70 times as much, 70% more. Working class, more than twice as much. The thing I'm proudest of, people whose incomes were in 0 to the 20% bracket, their incomes went up 30 times as much. We moved 100 times as many people out of poverty. We can do this again. But we got to have an economy that works for the struggling, the striving, and the successful. That's Hillary's phrase. But wherever people are working together, good things are happening. Wherever they spend all their time fighting, good things are not happening. Wherever people would rather have short-term gain instead of long-term shared prosperity, good things are not happening. We got to do this together. So we have to remove all these other barriers. We need a sensible immigration reform program, not promises to deport people in a way that would collapse the economy. We need a sensible program to reduce the number of nonviolent offenders that are being held in prison too. But with all these educators here, we also got to make sure that they don't turn around and go back by giving them transition, education and training and job placement, and not letting people refuse to hire them because they just got out of jail. They need to be able to start again. We need equal employment opportunities for the LGBT community. Look at this. The gay rights movement is the fastest moving civil rights movement in American history. So we get to gay marriage, you get married on Saturday, you can still be fired on Monday. That doesn't make any sense. We need to fix that. The disability community is the fastest growing consumer sector in America. Did you know that? And when placed in jobs for which they are trained according to their abilities, they have better average attendance, better average performance, better average productivity improvements than the workforce as a whole. We need to do this together. So it's not just the places that are left out and left behind. We can't leave any people behind.
Yes. Woo!
And if we do this, I am telling you, we can grow together again. We can rise together. We can all be part of a future where America is winning again. But we have to do it together. So that's the last point I want to make. It's hard to have shared prosperity and a shared society if we don't have equal standing as citizens for the law. So this Supreme Court appointment is really significant. And look, I think the president ought to make it. And if you nominate somebody qualified, which you will, the person ought to be confirmed. Yeah. But what you need to know is, not only have the Republicans promised not to do that, because they had a 5-4 majority that helped their politics. They have promised not to do it, and then the next president, in all probability, will get 1 or 2 more appointments, even if the president gets them confirmed. We cannot stand to have a Republican president, a Republican Congress, and a Republican Supreme Court. We need a Supreme Court that thinks voting rights should be expanded, not restricted. A Supreme Court that believes belonging to a labor union is a right, and if you want to ride along, you should at least pay for the services the union provides to you. We need a Supreme Court who want to revisit Citizens United, which hung a for sale sign on the door of our democracy. I never thought I'd live to see the day when the U.S. Supreme Court would say the First Amendment's right of free speech includes the money in your pocket. Which means, obviously, anybody can read the words, that the billionaire and the minimum wage worker are equally free to spend everything they want on politics. He used to teach that constitutional law. I'd thought somebody had that answer. We got to do this together, which means the next president needs to be somebody who knows when to stand their ground and how to find common ground. And that's it. My argument is simple. Hillary's the only person you can vote for in either party who has spent 40 years plus taking aggressive action to change other people's lives for the better.
All right.
From the time she got out of law school and went to work for the Children's Defense Fund, fighting the incarceration of juveniles in South Carolina, the wrongful claiming of tax credits for segregationist academies in Alabama, registering Mexican American voters who were systematically kept out of the political system in South Texas, providing people in the Ozark Mountains their first access to the civil justice system in their lives. She's always been about making something good happen. Long before anybody knew anything about universal preschool, she came to see me once when I was governor, almost as if she were another constituent. She said, you know, we got 6 of the poorest counties in America, the 20 poorest counties in America. You got all these parents that can't read, they can't write. They know no arithmetic, they know nothing. And their kids are going to start school, they'll never catch up. I found a program in Israel for Ethiopian immigrants who don't speak Hebrew or English. It teaches these people to do all that, and in the process become their children's first teacher, and they're doing great in school. I think it would work here. I said, sounds good to me, Hillary, but what are we going to do about it? She said, oh, I already did it. So, that's my pitch. When I met her, I thought she was the best doer I ever knew. 45 years ago this month. And I still think that. There have been lots of times in this election when I briefly wished that I had some more distance from her so you would believe what I'm saying. But I'm telling you, I've been doing this a long time. 15 years in my foundation, working around the world, being president, the only period of shared prosperity in the last 50 years plus. Being a governor that just literally grabbed the state by the throat. It took 10 years to reorganize it so we can rise together. We can rise together.
Yes.
But you need a change maker. Go out and tell people that and win Ohio for her, and she will be nominated and elected. Thank you.